10 reasons to be bullish on beef. That's what we're talking about in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Are you looking for productive efficiencies in growing higher yielding, better performing crops? XtremeAg provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. Visit newfieldsag.com for more information to help you farm better. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I got an interesting topic for you today. We're talking about the beef business, and I'm not talking about the market right this second or where it's going to go tomorrow. I'm talking about reasons to be bullish on beef for the long haul. As I commonly say, my degree is in agricultural economics. I've had a hobby beef operation, was raised on a dairy farm where we retained all of our bull calves and we did feed them out and sell them as fats. I have obviously experience in this, but I am not a beef markets expert, nor would I want to be. I find this to be tedious. I'm not talking about the price moves on the board of a cent and a half or a $1.50 per hundredweight. I'm talking about longer term. Where can this thing go, and why do I think long term there's some good prospects for beef? Now, it's pretty common in agriculture that when things are good in the moment, we think it will never end. But we also, if we've lived long enough and worked in the world's most important industry, we know that everything is cyclical. And beef obviously has always been one of those, we talk about the 7 to 10 year beef cycle, replacements and the length of gestation and the amount of time it takes to fatten an animal and how that contributes to these big ups in the supply and then downs in supply, et cetera, et cetera. But this time it feels a little different. Be careful, by the way. Be careful, by the way. Everybody, when they were wanting to justify a current situation and be overly optimistic or exuberant, like our friend Alan Greenspan with the Federal Reserve, back when we used to have a Federal Reserve that amounted to a shit, used to say, he said irrational exuberance. I'm not exhibiting irrational exuberance. I'm just giving you some big picture thinking here of why I think for the next 10, 20, 40 years, we might be in a really good situation for beef. I welcome people from the industry to question that. Obviously, I'm here to make you think and give you a lot of numbers and commentary based on where I see things going. You will not offend me if you disagree with me on any of my 10 points. We keep things civil. It's about a big picture business discussion here in the business of agriculture. All right, let's go right into this. I got a really nice compliment from a fan that sent me a thing and said, you know what I like? I like your show because you get right into it. You talk about the topic and you don't jackass around here for like the first 15 minutes and, talk about you doing your laundry and whatever. So we're not going to do that. 10 reasons to be bullish on beef. And I'll give it to you right now. First one is economics. But of the 10, I go everything from the business side to the consumer side, marketplace, even the politics of it, and then some trade issues. That's where all these are going to go in those directionally, okay? So why would I be bullish on beef? Just a couple of real quick background notes. I've been thinking about this beef thing a lot because I just put a quarter of beef into my freezer, and I'm holding up a package. If you're listening to this, I'm holding up a package of 2 shrink-wrap beef rib steaks, really nice-looking steaks right here. And you're talking about putting like $1,000 into your freezer. So that's kind of what got this thinking. Obviously, I work in ag, but I'm thinking, how long does this stay going? How long can we get into this thing of the consumer paying so much, et cetera? And that's where the economics, as always, got me contemplating this first and foremost. The economics are amazing. Right now, we're about $1,000 more per head for a feeder than we were 12 months ago. Think about that. And if you want to put that in perspective, maybe you work in the cranberry industry and you're not sure what that means. You're talking about like up 50% from a year ago. Newborn calves. My tenant is a dairyman. He breeds about 2/3 of his herd, certainly the lower half of his herd, to beef bull calves. He was selling bull calves, day to 3-day-old bull calves, for $75 5 years ago. It's about 10 times that now. So this thing is crazy because of demand, and that's where I'm going to go with the economics. We're at these points because we have the lowest beef herd since like 1960. That's roughly 1950s, 1960. We're at a very low beef herd here in the United States of America. So when you talk about the numbers and the economics, our supply is very much dwindled. That's why these big dairy farms are breeding their older cows Or a few of their less productive cows get bred to an Angus bull or maybe a Limousin or another beef breed. The point is it comes out as a black calf. It's half beef breed, half dairy breed. They get sold into the beef trade because the dairy farms used sexed semen on their higher producing cows and their new heifers. Sexed semen has an 80 to 90% chance of throwing you a heifer calf, because if you're in the dairy business, you need females because boys don't milk. I understand this is still a challenge in America right now where we think that boys can have babies and all that, but they can't because, trust me, I'm a farmer. So anyway, we're throwing a bunch of these beef on dairies, as they're called, into the beef herd because we've got such historically low numbers. If you want to go back and listen, about a year or two ago, I did an episode about the beef on dairy and how it's changing up some dynamics of the business. Were it not for that, we'd be even at a worse deficit of beef animals. So the economics work out really well right now. And you're saying, yeah, but Damian, you already told me this is cyclical. So if the economics are good right now, that means eventually, because we know what farmers do and ranchers, when prices are good, you just keep producing more and more and more until you've oversupplied, like you've told me, Damian, is gone on in soybeans. $15 soybeans created $8.90 soybeans. It's not the China thing. You've heard me say this. There's so many beans on the global marketplace between Brazil, China, other countries, United States of America. Oversupply is where these prices are. Yes, trade would help, but the point is there's more soybeans than we need. We're going to start dumping in the ocean. So is that going to happen in beef? Maybe. But think about this. 8 billion people on the planet. If we can continue to have global growth economically, it's not going to be like what the meteoric rise was in China from 1990 to 2020, but we still have some economic growth. That means consumers eat better. In the United States of America, we have fewer children now than we've ever had, meaning women are not having as many babies. This should point to an economic improvement per individual. In other words, if you were raised in a large family and your dad was a blue-collar worker, mom stayed home with the kids, you didn't have a lot of money, you probably sure didn't eat a lot of steak. But if you're a family of 1 or 2 and you have a job in town and you make good money, you have more economic leeway at the grocery store. This should bode well for beef. When I talk about the economics, I already talked about the supply, very, very low. But demand is not tapered off, and that's the biggie here. Demand is not tapered off. We're still eating around 58 pounds of beef per American per year this year, the year 2025 when I'm recording this. That's the number that's projected, 57, 58 pounds. We've been in that 55 to 58 pound range for a long while, and we've doubled the price. So when demand stays relatively constant and the price is doubled, that tells me there's a hell of a lot of, we talk about elasticity of demand. Apparently, steaks, and more so, it's another package of burger I'm holding up right now, a little pound package of burger that I just put in my freezer. It tells me there must be very little elasticity of demand when you really think about it, because just like eggs, 2.5 times in price, and we didn't really sell, 70% less eggs. Maybe that's the case on beef. Maybe our number, 57, 58 pounds per American per year of consumption, is going to stay there. Then think about this. If the economics of the consumer are good, and the demand stays there strong, and then we do overproduce, or we get more supply in the beef herd, and we get off of these low herd numbers in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Well, if the consumer's willing to eat 58 pounds of beef when it's $16, $19 for a pound of steak, $6 for a pound of burger, I don't know exactly what the numbers are at the local grocery store, because I buy my beef. Obviously, my beef comes off the farm here. But the point I'm making to you is, if we then come down in price by 25% and we have not lost demand on this rapid doubling of beef prices, this should bode well. So the economics are the number one reason that I'm bullish on beef, because I think if a consumer stays well off financially and is eating beef at these numbers, bring those prices down 20%, the ranchers, the producers are still making a lot of money, and demand can go up. The peak beef consumption in the United States of America was in 1975, 1976, about the time I was in kindergarten. To give you a little dating there, we ate almost 100 pounds of beef per American per year. We're obviously down to 57, 58 pounds. Chicken's up to around 100 pounds. But here's the other part of that, and I wrote about this in my book. Five years ago, this book, Food Fear, came out about the past, present, and future of agriculture. We continue to eat more animal protein. We're around 95 pounds of chicken per year, 100 pounds of chicken per year. We stay right around 15 to 16 pounds of turkey per year, around 50 pounds of pork per year, and around 57, 58 pounds of beef. In other words, if the economics that I see happening for the American consumer can continue to stay strong, and we get through this inflation and we get a Federal Reserve that works with versus against the American public, all of a sudden I see an opportunity for beef to expand. As the supply expands, the demand can expand with it, and it's not going to necessarily take it from another source of protein. We'll just eat a few more pounds of protein, which we already do, around 220 pounds of poultry, pork, and beef, and that includes turkey in the poultry category, 220 pounds per American per year, and then we're around 16 pounds of fish. So I can see us eating more protein. I'm going to get into the diet aspect of that, but I was talking about the economics. Another reason I'm bullish on beef, and I give you the economics, I know I spend a lot of time on that because that's the primary one. And because I'm an ag econ guy, but I'm telling you that's the primary reason. Number two reason I'm bullish on beef for the long haul. Differentiation opportunities. Okay? We have pasture-raised pork, and we have free-range chicken. Organic is a category. But you have a real opportunity to do even greater amounts of differentiation. And why would that be important? Because you can satisfy a different and a growing amount of consumer tastes and preferences. So think about this. When we can differentiate, as opposed to number two yellow corn, which just, the entire industry commoditized the heck out of that so they could compare your corn to the neighbor's corn to everybody, and there's also no comparison, blah, blah, blah. We can differentiate more on something like beef. It's a ruminant, so we can use different feeding sources. Obviously, you have a harder time doing that with, say, chickens, right? Their gastrointestinal system versus a ruminant is very different. So it could be grass-fed. It could have special rations. Remember a while back we were talking about using lemongrass to cut the amount of methane. There can be organic. There can be non-feed yard. There could be grain only. There can be by breed we can differentiate. There can be by the category of feed, which is so many different sources there. There can be the category, obviously, of practices and production. There can be differentiation, like the Jewish faith have a certain amount of practices that have to happen on the slaughter. You can differentiate that way. These are opportunities to differentiate and thereby create new customers and add more customers, also while retaining value through differentiation. So I'm bullish on beef because I think that it lends itself to differentiation about as well as anything, from the practices to the diet to the slaughtering to the breed. A lot of opportunity there. I'm bullish on beef because of the environmental thing. I'm going to give you two reasons on this. First off, do you remember you've been told, whether you work in or outside of agriculture, beef is bad, cow farts. That largely has not fallen on deaf ears. It's fallen on ears that want their steak and eat it too. Oh, sure, there's some people that are going to get all caught up in this, and they'll be on their phone all day, and they'll go to the coffee house with their vegan friends and talk about the environmental degradation because they heard that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that cow farts are killing us. That is not the majority of consumers. It's not even a healthy minority of consumers. Those that subscribe to the climate change crusade don't even subscribe to it because we're still in single-digit percentages of a consumer base. I'm talking about here in the United States or even North America. We can count Canada in this as well, because I have a lot of Canadian listeners. We're in a single-digit percentage that are actually vegetarian or vegan. Many people, the consumers, proclaim in surveys. I've read a number of articles about this. They proclaim in surveys that they are vegetarian or vegan. But in reality, I'm a vegan. Well, except I eat pepperoni on my pizza. Oh, except I like bacon. Okay, there's all of that. You're talking about a handful, seriously, a few percent of us. So the environmental argument never caught on. We've been hearing this nonsense from Bill Gates and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all these other ones that are telling you that beef is killing the environment and greenhouse gases. It hasn't mattered. Look what I just told you, even here in the United States, where food is a religion, where we adopt religions like climate change because it makes us feel good so we can buy our electric vehicle. Even here, it hasn't changed meat consumption. Obviously, I just told you, meat consumption's up, and it's not because it's so cheap. It's because humans want meat. We're omnivorous, which means we eat everything. The environmental argument I could also make is this, that bodes well and could be bullish for beef. I believe that we can tell an environmental story through beef as well as anything that we produce. Grazing lands, about 900 million privately owned farm acres in the United States. Maybe you can call it a billion if you want. About 360 million of that, so roughly 40% of those acres, are for cropland. Everything you eat, everything you don't eat. Corn, soybeans, wheat are the three bigs. Throw grain, sorghum, rice. You can put cotton. You can put all the orchards in there, and you get 360 million. We got 600 million acres roughly. That's highest and best use is for hay and grazing pasture land. You can't feed that to a chicken. You can't feed that to a turkey. You can't do aquaculture. There's really only the ruminants and a little bit of room for pasture-raised pork within that. The environmental angle that I would take is not only that our consumers have not bought into this whole beef is killing the environment argument, which is really propaganda pushed by the investors in fake meat. I'll get to that in a little bit, people like Bill Gates. It's the other part of it is we can talk about recycling, talk about the carbon cycle. All of a sudden, the animal eats cellulose. It craps in the field. We've now exchanged that. We now have vigorous new growth that comes on, which absorbs the carbon dioxide out of the air. I'm sorry. And all of a sudden, we can tell that environmental story. We're taking this environmental ground. Now, here's another angle on that. What if we have then not only an environmental story to tell, imagine those that used environment against beef. This bodes very well for us. Speaking of beef, I want to talk to you real quickly about this hat that I'm wearing right here. It's for my friends over there at Real Kansas Meats. I had them on this show in conjunction with Harvest Returns. You know about my friends at Harvest Returns? They are a financing company that helps agricultural businesses get the funding they need to grow and expand. You can fund your farm, your ranch, your agribusiness a lot of different ways, but it doesn't have to be hard. Maybe you don't fit the template. You go into a bank and they just don't understand what you're pitching. Look up Harvest Returns. Your operation is unique, so why should you try to fit a square peg into a round hole with one-size-fits-all ag credit? Harvest Returns is here to help. They understand that every agribusiness is different. With a pool of over 18,000 investors and creative financing options, Harvest Returns can bring the capital you need to reach your goals. Go to harvestreturns.com. Visit harvestreturns.com to learn more about how you can get started and grow your operation today. Okay, back to why I'm bullish on beef. And again, I'm here to make you think, and I'm taking a big picture view. We're not talking about what our beef price is going to be tomorrow or what's the Chicago Board of Trade going to do by the end of next week. I'm talking big picture. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It was 50 years ago that we hit peak beef consumption, almost 100 pounds. I don't think we're going to go back there, but I believe the decline is coming to an end. I think we're going to actually eating more beef, or at least stay the same for a while. Okay, hear me out. I'll tell you another reason. The number 3 reason I'm going to put in here is then, speaking of environmental, utilization of marginal or average land. Right now, I'm recording this in September of 2025. You've heard my statements a lot about oversupply, where we are on these massive amounts of crops that we have, and I mean massive amounts of crops. What about the fact that CRP probably won't expand? There's a lot of resistance in ag, but there's got to be at some point these people that are in production agriculture that fight with me on social media because they've apparently never taken Agricultural Economics 101. They think if we just somehow sign a trade deal with China that we're all of a sudden going to be back to $16 soybeans and $7 corn. It's not going to happen. Period. It is not. The globe is too produced right now. Brazil's making so many soybeans, and all these other countries, it's not going to happen. So what if there's a program? What if there's a program where instead of CRP, and I don't want the government involved, trust me, but I'm saying what if this is the next version of that? Hey, there's still about 10 million acres that are growing soybeans that we really don't need. They're in areas that require intensive amounts of irrigation out of sensitive aquifers. This is not good for our environment. Parts of the panhandle of Texas, you're growing corn. We don't really need this corn. We're trying to use as much as we can through ethanol. You know what? Let's revert some of that to grazing lands. Go out and seed wheat and put your background your steers on that, whatever it should be. And what if there's a little bit of a financial kick to do that beyond just the price of the animals? What if there's a financial kick to say we want to incentivize this to reduce acres that are in cropland that we right now are in excess supply of? I could see something like this happening. It could be voluntary. Trust me, there's all kinds of acres that were farmed and are still farmed that really should be used as pasture, should really be seeded to a complete 100% cover crop and protect those sensitive lands. And then the best way to utilize the crop off of that property would be something on a hoof. I can see this happening, and I can see the financial incentive to do so. Obviously, right now, the challenge is if you want to fill your 100 acres of rough ground with a bunch of bovine, they're really expensive to buy. That's the concern. But, of course, the incentive is there on the sale. Number 4 reason I'm bullish on beef for the long haul. I just gave you, I'll recap it at the number 5 point. Number 4 reason is I just told you utilization of marginal land and or issues that are impacting water. That's going to be a biggie. A bunch of beef out on an acre of arid land doesn't require the amount of irrigation that the flyover circle country does to grow crops. So I could see that some reversion going on there. All right, next reason, taste and flavor. If you're listening, I appreciate you listening, but I'm going to hold up my package of steaks again. Look at those. Look at those rib steaks and tell me that they don't look just dandy. These are bone-on rib steaks, so that means they even retain a little bit more flavor because all that moisture right there, that rich marrow, sounds good, doesn't it? You're talking about a product that has still maintained its taste versus just mass production. Now, we can get into grass-fed and diets and feed yards and how packers only let stuff hang for a couple of days and it doesn't go through the aging process that better steak does. There's all those things. But in general, compared to a broiler, which is hatched and then fattened in 43 days and has prioritized mass production, massive amounts of protein made quickly and cheaply, beef still pays for choice and prime, and you get a premium for that. And it's about marbling, and marbling tends to equate with flavor and tenderness. It's a premium product, which is why it's always been the most expensive protein. Right? Go to a third world country, there's goats and chickens running around the yard because they can eat about anything and they grow fast. But beef, it's a little bit more of a rich person's product. Well, guess what? Taste and flavor is much the reason for that. And I think that there's a real case to be made as we move into more of a foodie scenario. Again, a more wealthy consumer, a consumer that doesn't have 11 kids to feed, that only has a small family, can all of a sudden shop based on their feelings and their flavors. They can go to a Whole Foods, they can go to a specialty market, and I think beef wins out. I'm bullish on beef because of the foodie movement and the issue of taste and flavor. Okay, I think I'm ready for number 6. My number 6 reason, speaking of taste and flavor, why I'm bullish on beef. Because the consumer has firmly, squarely, and almost unanimously rejected the meat alternatives that were crammed down our throats, literally, by marketers and propagandists and investors like Bill Gates, starting in 2018 with Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger, lab-raised product, Petri dish protein, pea and pulse products being made into something that's supposed to resemble meat. Story you've heard me say. In 2020, they're shutting down the economy, telling us that we're going to die if we touch our mail without sanitizing it first. I took over the grocery duties because I saw people on the media fighting in the parking lot over toilet paper. I said to Mrs. Mason, if one of us has to go to the grocery store, I'm probably better able to fight over toilet paper than you. I don't want you getting hurt. So I'm going to the grocery store when there's a run on groceries and people fighting over toilet paper. And guess what? Many categories were sold out. Empty shelves. Frightening. Reminded you like some sort of a nuclear holocaust was upon us or a Venezuelan communist experiment. But you went by the fake meat area and it was chock full, which tells me that even when consumers believe they might die, they wouldn't eat fake meat. The fizzle and the sizzle is completely off of fake meat. It's been 7 years since the crap came out. It had tremendous marketing, as good a marketing as any product in the history of America, right? Better than Tang, better than orange juice is not just for breakfast anymore, better than the other white meat, which a lot of campaigns were, because that was a crappy campaign, by the way, for the pork people. The other white meat, just like chicken, but more expensive. That's why it didn't catch, by the way. Here's my point. Fake meat is going to have a customer, and it's going to be about 0.5% of the U.S. population. At best 1%. Have you looked at the numbers? Beyond Meat's price as a company, their market capitalization, that's what the company's worth, is down 95, the last I looked, which was a month ago, is off 95% of where they were in 2018, 2019. The luster is completely off. The customers that they have is about who they're going to have. They are never going to appeal to the masses. The consumer that says, I want to know where my food comes from, I want to understand where my meat comes from, is not going to buy Impossible Burger, Petri dish protein, crap made out of, peas with some palm oil shipped over from Indonesia. It's been rejected. I'm not, this is not conjecture or commentary. This is fact. Look at the values of those companies and the consumption of their products. They're losing shelf space. The experimental customers that dabbled in it didn't like it. It went away. So a rejection of the alternative protein tells me that we've got a consumer, at least for the next while. Granted, food can be a fad. I talked about that in my book. Food can be a fad. I get that. But this consumer has a thing for something real. That bodes well for beef as much as anything. Let's talk about the next reason that I am bullish on beef, at least for the next 20 or 30 years. The politics. You talk about rejecting of artificial. Right now, and I'm not talking about the president, I'm just talking about the mood of the country. Let's just talk about these trends that also have somewhat of a basis to the media, to the politics, to where things go. RFK Jr. is currently heading up the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again Commission. He is the Director of Health and Human Services. More people know who RFK Jr. is than they know who the Secretary of Ag is. That's Brooke Rollins. Because he is a lightning rod. He is a activist. He gets a lot of attention. He got a lot of attention 1 year ago when he said that beef tallow would be healthier to fry our French fries in than seed oil, which is a catch-all for soybean, canola, corn oil, the types of oil, sunflower oil that we use in our fryers. We were told 30 years ago we needed to get out of lard or get out of animal-derived fats, and we needed to use seed oils because it was healthier for us. He's countered that. Several food chains have caught on and said, we're going to fry our stuff. This is very bullish for beef. We don't have enough beef right now to fill the fryers with tallow. But this is very bullish on beef. Where else is RFK Jr. really helping make my case for the bullish on beef? He raised the ire against sugar. In one of his interviews with Dr. Phil, talked about the fact that 100 years ago, we ate 90 pounds of sugar. That's a lot of sugar per American per year. 90 pounds per American per year. You know what we're at now? More than double that. We got obesity. 42% of Americans are obese. 75% of Americans are overweight. 11% of Americans are diabetic. He has raised the ire against sugar. You've seen some of my videos where I talk about this. Artificial flavors, artificial colors in the cereal, got them removed. Got big players, the Kellogg's, General Mills type players to Cargill, ConAgra, name the food company. Kraft Heinz said, you know what? We're going to take out all those artificial dyes and now they're starting to talk about reducing sugar. But you know what has not been catching the ire of RFK Jr. or the following? Meat. Beef in particular. All of a sudden, it's okay to eat meat. All of a sudden, remember all those years? Saturated fat, cholesterol, that's all out the window because a lot of it's been determined that it was all bullshit science. It was bullshit science. I talked about it in my book. I had a guest on here, that talked about her book was The Big Fat Surprise, Nina Teicholz. And we went through this entire discussion that was all bullshit for 50 years to sell a bunch of alternative products like margarine. And all of a sudden, the consumer is back to this. You don't see low fat on every food category at the grocery. You don't see plant-derived as a big pitch anymore. We're in a golden era of animal agriculture, and beef fits right into that. I think that we're okay politically and because of the mood of the nation and the moment right now, it was 50 years of low fat and get off of butter and go to margarine. What if we have a 50-year run now of, hey, pork, beef, chicken, it's all good. Milk, cheese, whole milk is a growth category right now. So if you think I'm lying that this fear of fat is actually dying, look at that category. Whole milk was like one of the few fluid milk categories that saw a surge over the last several years, and milk consumption has actually taken a bump upward after 80 plus years of decline. So be paying attention to this. And if you aren't, pay attention to me, because I pay attention to it. And that's why you tune in here to the Business of Agriculture. Speaking of my friends here at the Business of Agriculture and you as a listener, I want you to know about my friends at Redox. They've been with me for a couple of years now. Awesome company, headquartered out in Burley, Idaho. Family-run business begun by Darren Moon 31 years ago. He worked in specialty crop and saw a possibility to sell products that helped plants thrive without using more of the traditional harsh chemistry and synthetic fertility and all that sort of stuff. And so he came up with this thing called Redox. It's a bionutrient company. Now they sell products into turf and then increasingly are into broad acres. So Redox can help you get the most out of your nitrogen. This is going to be a big deal. Talk about environmental movements. We're going to have to cut back on nitrogen, applied nitrogen here in agriculture, because we have overused it, and it's nitrates in the water, and it's starting to create a hell of a lot of movement among those that are critical of agriculture. You're going to have to cut back on nitrogen. You can get the most from your nitrogen using products like RDXN. It's backed by more than a decade of research. It's gaining a lot of momentum from growers, including corn and soybean growers right here in the Midwest, where I am talking to you from today here at my farm in Indiana. RDXN is a patented, proven, plant-active botanical extract that's designed to improve your nitrogen efficiency by 50%, meaning you can cut back on nitrogen by quite a bit while boosting your crop quality and your consistency. Please check out redoxgrows.com to learn about their product RDXN that can help you through nitrogen management moving forward, and the entire lineup, redoxgrows.com. Been covering a lot of ground here. May I hold up those steaks again so you can take a look at them? I just dropped them on the floor. Package of burger right here. It's good stuff. Anyway, let's go with the next few reasons that I'm bullish on beef for the next decade or two. And again, I don't mind if you're a beef producer. If you have some thoughts on this, if you are anywhere in the beef trade, please feel free to drop me a line. And I wouldn't even mind doing a follow-up on this with somebody that's got a different take on some of this from the beef business, but as long as it's not from the NCBA, useless organization. Number 8. I think we're at number 8. Why I am bullish on beef. A refocus on domestic production and consumption. We know right now that there's the trade thing, and a lot of people that are less informed that work in production agriculture scream and yell, "Oh, we just got to work out a trade deal with China. Everything's going to be all right." No, that's not going to happen. You've heard me say it on every episode because it's not going to happen. That ship has sailed, okay? They're figuring out new ways to squander the resources from other countries that they can control, third world countries, less economically powerful countries, the United States, okay? So that means this move to create more domestic production and consumption for what we produce is going to continue. Ethanol is an example of that. I don't necessarily agree with some aspects of ethanol because it's creating demand for something that wouldn't have otherwise happened without government regulation, but that might be where we're going. But there is a refocusing, a more nationalistic approach. These other countries have had tariffs and trade restrictions in place for decades. You just didn't know it. We aren't allowed to take cars to Europe because Germany has Audi, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Porsche, and a few other manufacturers they're protecting. Other countries have essentially, and I'm not being Mr. Donald J. Trump here, but they have essentially taken from the United States' wealth by selling us their stuff and then put up a lot of restrictions and blocks to keep our stuff from coming to their country. Okay? So what's that mean? Well, what it means is that maybe we start becoming a little bit like those countries and being more restrictive. And that's what's happening right now. That's why these trade things are going on and we're hearing about these trade disputes. It's because we're starting to be a little more protective of our own. Well, if that happens, we can consume a lot of what we produce. Actually, right now, and I know a bunch of beef people are going to get sore at me, we're actually importing beef. It tends to be typically lower cuts, lesser quality stuff to fill a demand that we can't quite supply. But again, through expansion of the beef herd, we could have less imports into our country and continue down the road of better consumption of our domestic production. Yeah, I know there's going to be a bunch of people sending me stuff about country of origin labeling and all this stuff. Again, I'm not an expert on any of that. I know that right now we're importing beef. I get that. And some of it's from Canada. Good deal. Us in Canada need to get our trade relations going. The stuff with Mexico and the screwworm, I get all that. I'm talking big picture. I'm not talking about what's happening this second right now. Big picture, I believe that we're going to continue in this more nationalistic protectionism of all things American. And we're going to say, as a part of that, let's make sure we're doing all we can to produce, to consume what we produce here. This movement doesn't go away in the next 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, I don't think, based on being a person that follows trends in the marketplace. Number 9 thing that might bode well, and this one I have a question mark next to it. So again, I don't mind if you ponder this about the same as me. The movement towards small and local does favor beef. Well, look at this company right here that I'm wearing their hat. They are a more regional specialty processor of beef. Remember, there was government grant money tossed at the smaller processing of beef and meat just a year or so ago, a couple years ago. The idea was we've got too much production that goes through the 4 big packers, so there's room for the next tier. And maybe there is. The beef thing bodes very well. I mean, next to backyard chickens or somebody putting an egg stand out at the end of their driveway with a cardboard sign, beef is right there in terms of it tends to work well on the small and local movement. Farmers markets, buying quarters of beef off of people like me that are, produce 20 steers a year. That, of course, you're saying that, Damian, that doesn't move the needle. I mean, my God, I'm reading an article here on beef.com about a 200,000 head feeder facility that's located in Nebraska. I get it. That's where the bulk of consumption goes. But remember, we do have processors, not just in Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, etc. They are all over, and there are mostly feed yards in those states that I named, Kansas, Oklahoma, whatever. But there is room for that small local consumer base, especially in beef, and it goes back to some of that differentiation that I talked about, which is a market opportunity for beef. The dollars are a challenge a little bit on some of the processing, and then obviously the supply. But the one thing is, and it's been a while since I brushed up on my numbers, we still have a very small and diverse set of operators. Now, some of that's gone away. I'm talking about producers of cow-calves. The average cow-calf operation is like 31 cows the last I looked. So you're not talking about a vertically integrated business right now like chicken or eggs or even pork, where most pork is raised on a contractual arrangement with one of the large vertically integrated processors. So there is a case to be made, if there's still some value for the smaller independent operator, that beef might have an opportunity here, because it's that way at the cow-calf level, at the ranching level, maybe not so much at the feed yard level, and then obviously at the packer level isn't, but there is an awareness of this. So I get it. I'm putting a question mark on that reason as to how bullish I am, but I did put that down as one of my 10 reasons. And my number 10 reason for why I'm bullish on beef is the USA. Yeah, and by the way, remember, I work in Canada. People keep up with me from Australia. I'm not doing this out of some jingoistic rah-rah USA chant like at a Olympics event. I'm doing it because we are still here in the United States of America, where I'm recording this today, the number one producer of beef in terms of quantity in the world. Quality, pretty darn good also. Brazil has more head of animals, but produces less pounds of beef, because we tend to have a different system, a more efficient system, a system that hangs more beef on a carcass. Less animals out there running around in the rangeland and forest land. So we are the number one producer of beef globally. We're pretty damn good at it. It's pretty much in our DNA. Yeah, it is some of those other countries also. I get it. Australia has cowboys, and Brazil has cowboys, and Mexico has vaqueros, I think is their word for a cowboy. But there are certain countries that Canada, obviously the whole west, the west of Canada, out there in those beautiful western provinces, it's beef country. I get it. But there's countries that are not beef countries, okay? Denmark is not a beef country. It's just not, okay? Where I'm going with this plays to our strength. If you believe that we will have trade favors countries that have an economic advantage at producing something. Okay, Japan got really good at making VCRs. That's why I know VCRs. I know I'm dating myself. Google it, VCR. In the 1980s, when every home then got a VCR so they could watch videotapes in movies and record weddings and force their friends to watch their boring-ass wedding videos, VCRs didn't come from the United States of America. They came from Japan because they had an economic advantage. They built up the infrastructure. By golly, they were good at making VCRs. The point is, every country that is, dominant in something, they have an economic advantage. They have a strength of productive capacity to make that. And we have that in beef. We have the infrastructure. We have the land. Massive amounts of land that probably is best used for this, not necessarily for row crops or for cereal crops in some cases because of moisture. We have the property, we have the infrastructure, we have the processing. We are throwing more money at some other processing. We have a reputation, and we already are the number one producer. So why would that change? It doesn't have to. Leave us alone. Don't do stupid USDA programs. Instead, do some that actually accentuate this without distorting it, and let us remain the world's number one beef producer. It's one of the few places we still are shining. And yeah, I know we're importing beef right now. I get it. I've read the articles also. I understand the numbers. But I'm saying long term, this is still an opportunity, a very viable market opportunity for us. And if we ramp up our beef herd, as I believe that we will and should, and do everything that we can to make that happen, I don't believe we're going to go back to then break even or below break even beef prices. Why do I say that? Because I believe this consumer is going to stay with us. There's been a little bit of a sea shift, a sea change, if you will. The consumer is going to remain. I mean, here they are, eating 58 pounds of beef this year at double the price they paid just a couple years ago. And you tell me that that's not a strength for our product? It is. So I just gave you the 10 reasons of why I'm bullish on beef. You can drop me a line, let me know what you think. When we're talking about, $3.60 feeders, $2.40 live weight. I saw an old bull go through an Iowa sale barn last summer and sell for $1.90 a pound. That would have been a 40-cent per pound animal just a few years ago. I see some real opportunity here, but I don't think it goes away. My 10 reasons why I'm bullish on beef: economics, differentiation of product, the environmental, first off, the rejection of the nonsense that cows are killing us, and also the environmental play that we could make if we're smart as an industry, and we talk about how we're recycling carbon and the regenerative and using livestock in the regenerative agricultural practices where you're putting cattle out on cropland and recycling those nutrients. There's so much of an environmental story to be told here. It's just a matter of repositioning and taking the argument back from the propagandists that are using their story to either push veganism, control what you eat, or more importantly, sell their crap like fake meat. Number 3 reason I'm bullish on beef was then the environmental and the utilization of marginal land. I went then from there to the taste and the flavor issue. Number, whatever that was, 4 or 5. My 5 reason, rejection of fake meat. The marketplace has spoken. It doesn't want that crap. The politics and the movement that is upon us right now. Make America healthy again. Sugar's in the bullseye. Meat is over here getting its glory moment. Capitalize on that, because I think it's going to be around for a long while. Remember, we've been throwing excess sugar into everything we eat since the low-fat movement began 50 years ago. Well, maybe we have a movement here that capitalizes on what is real. Nothing says real like steak for the next 50 years. Then we talked about the refocusing on domestic consumption, which is a movement for sure that I think is going to stick around for a while as we move into an era of more nationalism and probably greater trade restrictions. Small and local, Talked about that one being a question mark on why I'm bullish, but I think there's something there. And then the number 2, the United States of America's competitive advantage in beef production. I very much appreciate you listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it with somebody that will enjoy it as well. I very much appreciate you tuning in. 420 episodes every Monday for more than 8 years. I've been cranking these things out. I have tremendous following. I have great fans, and I really appreciate you doing listening to this and being a part of the business of agriculture. Please go to my YouTube channel and hit subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. I'm just trying to do a lot of good over there. I hadn't focused on it forever, and then this year I started focusing on it. If you do like what I had to say about the business of agriculture, also check out the stuff I'm doing with my friends at XtremeAg. You can find them at XtremeAg. While you're on YouTube, you can just hit their channel and click on that. Very farmer-focused content versus more the business side like I do here. And also check out my new show, The Granary. We just started putting that out here at the beginning of 2025. It's filmed right here at my farm in my in-farm tavern, The Granary, where I talk to people in agriculture about a whole host of subjects. Until next time, thanks a lot for being here. I'm Damian Mason, and this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, sincere thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Business of Agriculture. I want to ask you, if you farm, are you looking for more productive efficiencies to grow higher yielding, better performing crops? Well, of course you are. New Fields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. If you want to learn more about the New Fields Ag product lineup, go to newfieldsag.com for information.